Hello and welcome to Sage by Name. I'm Dr. Becky Sage. This is my business clinic where I answer real questions from real humans building real businesses. It is called Sage by Name, but I will let you decide if it's Sage by Nature too. And in today's episode, we are going to be answering lots of questions about investment. 'Tis the season. There has been lots of investment activity going on over the last couple of months. It's now autumn time, and I guess a lot of people have had this on their mind. I have been working a lot with founders, and I've been having a lot of conversations with investors in order to best understand what the current nature of the market is, what the current expectations are. When I was fundraising for my first business, it was 2014, so things were a little bit different then. There certainly weren't as many people out there, that's for sure. So from that perspective, you have good times right now. So first question is, we're currently raising investment and the whole process takes a really long time. I'd rather be spending this running my business. What are the ways in which you can use AI to make the process more efficient? AI, automation, other tools as well online. There's a few tools I use with the companies that I'm working with, and I've also been out and asking what other people are doing, what are other founders doing in this space at the moment. And the way I would tackle this, and the first thing I would do is that if I was you, and me personally, I would do this on a piece of paper, not in AI. I would just brainstorm all those parts of the investment process and look at where some of the bottlenecks are for you. And then I would probably try and target those particular aspects. I know for others, they'd want to brainstorm that alongside their favorite AI chatbots. So I think one of the major areas where AI could be helpful, and you could build maybe even some kind of agent or certainly an automation, which does a dynamic check of current funds that are out there. You might want to be looking at equity investment, but you might want to also be looking at grant funding as well. So you could create a tool that does a search for you to look for those funders, those investors that are a really good investor fit for you. So you're looking for the types of things that they invest in. Is that a good match? The size of investments that they do, anything else about your company that might mean that it's a really good fit. Timelines for funding, that kind of thing. Obviously with grant funding, this works really well as well. And sometimes with grant funding, you have such a little time to turn it around that having something dynamic that then signals to you, it could be a twice weekly trigger that then sends you an email to say these are the funds that are currently available and that are a good match to you. The other thing that you might want to check with this is, do you have any warm leads, especially if you're looking on that equity investment side? So you could then link up with your LinkedIn, for example, to see if there are any people who could then introduce you to the investors that are currently active. So that's one good thing you could do. You can use AI to check your materials. So that's anything from your pitch deck to your data room. It could do a full audit of everything that you've got. You don't necessarily need to create this for your pitch deck because Ada Ventures already has something called Deck Genius, which you can use to check to see where your deck is. You might want to change, or you might need to add into that deck. There are usually two things here that you need to factor in. One might be that the communication isn't quite good enough, so you need to sharpen up the communication in order to make sure that you are ticking all the boxes that the investors need. But the other thing is that you may find the business isn't in the right place yet, or you don't currently have the information that you need, so you're going to need to go away, do extra work. What I like about this is it means that you can really prioritize that extra work that you need to do. The way the Ada Ventures Deck Genius works is that it highlights areas for improvement and highlights areas that are really strong. And there are people that have actually been funded by going through this process. I was also just talking to another angel group, and on what they have is a kind of assessment on their front page, and you can go through that through that assessment, and it does two things. Number one, if you score high enough, then that's a prerequisite for you then submitting your deck to that angel investment syndicate. But it also, again, gives you feedback about where you need to improve. Next question. I'm never sure who I should take with me to investor meetings. They take up a lot of time. Would the team be better focused on their work? Interesting question. It's interesting how you've worded it, because you've done it from the point of view of the team and where they're focusing their time. And of course, that's a good way to be thinking, because you need to be using your resources the best way possible. But actually, I think the answer to this question is by flipping this and looking at it through the eyes of the investors and what it is you need to be sharing with them. So I would say early pitches, I would take with me maybe one other team member, and a very senior team member, probably somebody with complementary skill sets. But I would not take highly technical or highly academic people unless that's very specifically what you know you're going to be talking about with those investors. So if it's literally just pitching, I would stay more on that commercial side, or at least with those who really understand the business aspects. I've been told by lots of investors and lots of serial founders as well that they've had these moments in meetings where they've taken somebody who's highly technical or highly academic and they start talking and they can just see the investors' eyes starting to glaze over, because the more technical or more academic founders may not have had that practice. Now, that's a big generalization, because actually a lot of the academic founders I work with these days are actually really great on the business and the commercial side too. But that's just a kind of general rule of thumb. I have talked before about taking an older white man with you if you are part of an underrepresented group, because of the way investment works, and that is something that I used to do. The reality is I took the chair of my business with me when we pitched, and I think that was a good thing to do. He wouldn't always come. I mean, he wouldn't come if, for example, I was doing a pitching at an investor event, for example. But if it was a pitch to an angel group or a pitch to an investment firm, then the chair of the business would come with me. Further down the line, you're going to need to bring other members of your team with you, because they're going to give you that credibility. So of course, once you get into technical due diligence, then those technical leads, the scientific people on your team, if you have them, are going to be really important people to really get into the nuts and bolts of the IP. That being said, make sure they know what they should and shouldn't be sharing. You do go quite in depth with investors, you do share quite a lot, but there might be aspects of IP where, for some reason, you need to keep that protected. But also, just from a communication standpoint, they don't necessarily need to communicate every single thing. So help them out by helping them understand what you're prioritizing in these meetings. I do think it's important to show that you are a team of people if you have a team. Co-founders is something that investors are looking for. They are looking for more than just one person if they're putting their money into a business. It lowers the risk if you've got a team, as long as each of those people on that team are the right people in the right roles. Next question. When it comes to the finances, it feels like there's a massive divide in terms of how much you need for your deck and how much you need for the data room and that sits behind it. Is there anything you use to help to visualize your data? Do you know something? It's really interesting. When I've been doing my startup for a while and we'd already got funding in, I can remember hearing from some investors that I worked with that they had founders who hadn't done full financial forecasts that were part of their portfolio. And it blew my mind, the idea that anyone would get investment at all if you didn't have a full financial forecast. And yet this does still seem to be the case occasionally. But I would say on the whole, yes, absolutely, you definitely need to make sure you've got a pretty robust financial forecast and that you are very, very clear on all of the assumptions that sit behind that forecast. Now, if all of that means nothing to you, then really go back to basics. Maybe you can use AI to help you. Obviously, it can't make your numbers up for you, but it can potentially tell you the types of things you're going to need to put in your forecast. You need to be putting in how you're making your money, so different revenue streams, how you're spending your money. You've got to remember things like, is there a cost of sales? So are your costs going to go up for every single one of those sales, or are your costs more overheads like staff or offices, that kind of thing. So you do need to make some assumptions about what you're going to be spending and what you're going to be making. You're also going to need to make those assumptions over a period of time and show that over 3 to 5 years. So you're going to need all of that in your financial forecast, and ideally to quite a granular level. Show who you're hiring, at what point in time, how much are you paying them, when are your office costs going to go up, what do you need in terms of maintenance or training or those kind of things, what are you going to need for marketing, etc., etc. So you definitely do need to have a detailed financial forecast. And I don't know how, without that financial forecast and without writing all those assumptions down, how you would know what you're going to be spending and how you would know how much money you need to ask for from the investors. Now, I'm still pretty old school in all of this, so I use Excel and I make a cash flow graph from that and a profit and loss graph from that, and I look at what's that peak cash going to be, when are we going to break even, all of those kind of things, and I would put it on those graphs. I used to have quite a lot of fun making loads of different graphs, like things like headcount, user numbers, all of these kind of things. That was like all built into my spreadsheet, and then I would just pull those graphs. Because as I said, this isn't just about me, and the tools have progressed. They have moved on since I was doing this for myself. Although I did last go out for investment only a year ago, so it wasn't actually that long ago. Now, recently I have heard of people using databases to visualize finances, and a few different ones, and in particular those that have traditionally been used as CRMs. So, for example, Airtable is something that people have talked about. So these tools can certainly track any kind of previous spending, and you can pull in, it might be money, but it might be other metrics that you're wanting to display as well. But it can be used for forecasting as well. And so this is what I'm hearing more and more. If you already have something that you're using as a database, then maybe you want to pull all of that together and you want to create dashboards and for yourself, but you could also then use that for other people who you then give access to. So this could be a really neat way of pulling together some of the things that you need for your data room on the investment side as well. So this is something that I haven't really tried to do, but I have known other people have had great success with that. So that might be something to try if you're already using those tools anyway. Final question: how much detail should you put into your data room? So for those of you who don't know, your data room is essentially a folder where you would put anything that you might need to share with investors. So you've got everything in one place. And I would suggest that you want lots and lots of different folders within there that are going to support different aspects of the business. Things that have already happened, like any kind of reports, actual data that you've collected, and things just like your certificate of incorporation and just those kind of details. But you also do want to make sure you've got like your full forecasts in there, all of those kind of things. So you want to make sure you've got everything related to the business in that data room, but organized really well. But actually, it's something that I recommend that every company I work with does if they're going for investment is that they create an investor FAQ document. So then you want to capture kind of all those common questions that you might get asked by investors. And you'll be able to pick them up from having conversations, add those FAQs in. It might also be something you want to kickstart with a little help from AI as well. What you can do is have that FAQ document and then link it to the relevant documents that you've got stored elsewhere in the data room. And that way you can have a lot of detail to back up what you're saying, but it would actually be a lot clearer because you've just got those FAQs as essentially a kind of header for everything else that's going to go into that data room. So I would say, yes, you need quite a lot of detail. You need plenty of things for people to look through, and you ideally don't want to be in a position where you're having to kind of scramble things together in order to give them to investors. So it's much better if you can put them in a data room, but by having the FAQs, it just makes it much easier for navigation. I hope that was some useful stuff on investment. Obviously, if you've got any questions about investment or anything else, I would love to hear from you. So pop those questions in the comments, or you can go over to my Instagram and DM me over there. Look forward to seeing you soon. Bye.